My name is Brooklin Bade. I got into the gym really, I want to say about 5 or 6 years ago. I had no idea what I was doing with my life, and that's kind of what drove me to just say screw it and join the military. And then once I was in the military, I was really lost. Again, I just didn't. I was so used to playing sports my whole life. I was a competitive gymnast, competitive cheerleader. I ran like track and field. So once you aren't in college and you're not in that type of environment, I switched. It was a total like almost like a culture shock, and I was like, I don't know what to do. In the military, obviously you have to like have a fitness standard, but really it's just like, okay, do this amount of push-ups, run this mile and a half, and like that's it. And so I was almost bored. I was just like bored. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I've always struggled with body image issues too, and I really looked up to bikini girls and just competitors in general. And I was like, I want to do that. And that's when I really took my lifting serious. I learned how to track macros, calories. I don't want to say I was ever like super overweight. I was very athletic, but never like quote unquote fit. I don't think I definitely didn't know how to like eat right and stuff like that. I could definitely push weight in the gym, but I almost think that benefited me because like almost like an extreme bulk and then just going balls to the wall with lifting. But once I learned really how to track those macros and everything, that's when everything just really took a turn. I saw my physique changing so quickly, and I was putting on so much muscle really fast. Um, and I wasn't even like trying to get shredded. I just naturally just had like a really solid build. And I would always have people come up to me in the gym on my base and they're like, do you compete? You should compete. And I'm like, well, that's the goal. I don't know when really, but um, I don't know. Once I COVID hit, and that's when I really wanted to start a prep. And I was having some health issues going on too. And I was like, I don't think I could start a prep right now. But once shows started coming back around, I hired a coach immediately. And then I want to say like 15 weeks later, I was on stage. Um, and then I fell in love, and I just got my pro card this past December, which is still crazy to even say out loud, I feel like, because I don't feel like a pro. I have not competed as a pro yet, but yeah.
What actually led you into the military?
Oh, me. I honestly, to this day, I don't even know what was going through my mind. Just, I, all my friends, like in high school, knew exactly what they wanted. I know I had like two of my friends, they were amazing dancers, and they're like, we're going to go to University of Kentucky, and we're going to try to be on the dance team. And she's like, I want to pursue law and all this stuff. And I'm like, how do you guys, I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. And I actually did. I went to or I tried out for the Northern Illinois University cheer team, and I made it. Um, but then I was like, oh my God, like, okay, cool. I'm going to college. I'm going to be on this good cheer team. But like, when it comes to career wise, I don't know what I want to go to school for. Why would I waste all that time and money just to what? Pursue cheer? Like, that's not a thing. Like, definitely not a thing. And so I did classes for like a month and I dropped out. And I was like, oh no, I was a waitress. I had no idea. My dad was in the Navy, and just hearing like his past experiences and everything, he really took that time to find himself too. And I was like, well, maybe I could do that and just join the Air Force, figure myself out. And then I could go to college and screw off because it'll be free, right? I get my GI Bill. Um, yeah, that was really the only thing. I just had no idea, and I needed to fill that time to really figure myself out.
So have you always been someone who has to kind of have that like longer, broader vision?
I think so. And I'm we'll probably talk about this more later, but I'm still going through that to this day. Um, I jumped into the military not really knowing myself. I was 18 years old. Um, and then like once I fell in love with weightlifting, awesome. Okay, now I'm a pro, right? And I didn't have a good break at all. I competed for like 3 to 4 years straight with no breaks. And then there comes a point where you literally have to take a break. It's not good on the body to stay that lean. And I definitely did for far too long. And now I'm struggling with that internal, like, okay, that's all I knew when I was in the military. And now I'm out of the military and I am taking that break from competing. Now I have this internal conflict with myself right now. I'm like, okay, who am I outside of the gym? Who am I when I'm not competing? So I almost have like imposter syndrome, like with myself. I'm like, I don't know what else I'm good at. I don't know still where I want to go career wise, which is so mentally just like a mind fuck almost. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. But we're slowly figuring it out. I have tried multiple different things. I went to school to be a surgical technologist when I originally planned on going to school to be a nurse, and then I switched that. and then and then once I was like, no, I hate this. Now I'm like, okay, back to the drawing board type thing right now. So we're still figuring it out.
Do you feel like that because you were trying to like figure it out, that staying active in bodybuilding and like for those 3 to 4 years and staying lean, even though you probably knew it wasn't the best thing for you, it was almost like this placeholder, and it was did it become like an addiction to have like this thing that you at least knew that you were like doing and that you could physically like show yourself, hey, this is what I'm doing and these are kind of like the results that I'm getting from doing it?
Yeah, it was just like that positive feedback too. When people see you in the gym, it's like, oh my God, like you compete. And I'm like, yeah. And then once, you take that time off, or you take that season off, that off season where you literally have to gain weight. And it's like you're almost like you're, I want to say it was almost like self-validation. Like, okay, I'm working towards something and I'm good at this. And then now I'm still working towards something, but I almost feel like I don't have like the body to show for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like you have these people like acknowledging, and even you're like self-acknowledging that you're on this track, and then once that physical kind of proof goes away, even though you're still on that track, it almost is like you're back to it almost, I guess, and I was trying to put myself in your shoes, and maybe you would feel like that you're just kind of like not on that track anymore. You like nothing is standing out anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just like that solid like validation. You get all this positivity too, like on Instagram and stuff. You always post how shredded you are and just making like crazy reels about like how shredded you are and how good you look. And then once that all goes away, it's almost like, okay, what now? Like, what now? But I'm very glad that I am taking this time off again to really find myself and dig deep almost in a different way. You dig deep when you're competing into your mind, body, and soul to push as hard as possible, right? And now it's like, okay, Brooke, let's take a step back. Who are you as a person besides competing, besides the stage, besides the weights? Like, who are you and what are you good at? What are you passionate about besides that? And I'm slowly finding my way, slowly but surely. And I am really glad that the time is now, I feel like, because now I can really just focus on something else. It was almost, I was going down a slippery slope. It was an addiction. I was addicted to being lean. I was addicted to, showing that off. The acceptance with your body image too, because you're getting the acceptance from other people. It was almost feeding like that fuel, and it's not good. Not good.
Did it feel like you were addicted to being a bodybuilder instead of a person that was a bodybuilder?
Yep. You hit the nail on the head right there. That's the best way to explain it.
And when you first got into it, did that feeling come quickly to you that, hey, I am now a bodybuilder, or did it take a while to kind of feel like you were one?
I think once I hired a coach and I started working towards a show, I already right there felt like a bodybuilder. I would spend so much time on the internet, YouTube, Instagram, watching and following these competitors. I'm like, okay, I'm doing what you guys are doing now. I am a bodybuilder. The second I stepped on stage, I won my first show, and I was like, okay, I'm a bodybuilder, and I'm obsessed with it.
And because you won that first show, was there any fear at all related to winning?
Yeah. That's another thing too that I struggle with so much is that I am just so hard on myself. And I think what holds me back so much just in life is just fear of failing. Um, and I think I it's so hard to explain. Yes, after that first show, I was like, okay, now we just have to work harder. And every show I would go into, I would be like, okay, push, 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 like you can do this. And I remember I ended up doing my first national show, my first year of competing, and I got dead last. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, maybe I can't do this. But then I was like, no, like you just need to work harder. And that always just like is what really motivated me. Um, and I think that's why I am a good competitor. I'm very compliant. I'm very coachable. But again, it's toxic. It is really toxic if you don't have that self validation with yourself or that confidence outside of bodybuilding. It's like figure that out first. Figure yourself out first because again, just mentally, it's toxic. It's toxic.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.
Did you actually start when you were in the military, or was that after?
I actually started lifting weights before I had joined the military just because it was just something to do. Again, I wasn't really in sports. And that's honestly when I really started to deep dive into the Instagram world and following all these competitors or like fitness influencers and stuff. And again, I never really had the body at all for it at the time. And I was like, I want to look like that. And a lot of people always say in bodybuilding, like, you need to find your why. And I feel like my only why was I want to prove to myself that I can do it. And mentally, I didn't think I could do it, but I sure as hell wanted to try just to prove myself wrong.
And having, you mentioned the fear of failure. Do you feel like this sport has helped you overcome that fear because it's almost like inevitable that you are going to fail?
It really has. Yeah. And that is one thing I'm really grateful for this sport is it's not about winning. It's about beating yourself every single time. Are you making improvements every single time? And the second you stop making those improvements, I think that's when you fail. You can step on stage and get dead last, and it's okay. You can step on stage the very next week and win the overall. It's so black and white when it comes to this sport, which I think is so fun and it makes it even more exciting. But there's always room for improvement too. So that's just what keeps me going.
Is that mentally a struggle at all for you, knowing that like you just did really well or you didn't do well, and now it's like, well, what's the outcome going to be? Because I feel like things haven't really changed that much. I mean, obviously different competitors, maybe a different show, but like, or did it maybe take a while for you to gain that acceptance of like, I can only do what I can do and the rest is up to other people to decide?
Are you talking about like the judges? Like it's really just up to the judges at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I did, God, I made some crazy changes within March to September of last year. And I remember I was like, I killed myself this prep, basically. Top 5 at a national show. And I remember talking to Sandy, the head judge, after. And I was like, give me my feedback. I see changes every single time you are in front of my eyes. And I'm like, okay, that's all I needed to hear. I'm glad that you recognize that and you see that.
For you, having like a competitive background and being, you know, in the sports world before, was that something that when you initially stepped on stage was challenging for you to?
I think what really just intrigued me about the sport in general is that you don't have another teammate to rely on. You have a coach to rely on, that's for sure, but she's not going to make you go to the gym. She's not going to hold your hand. She's not going to help track and portion all your meals for you. She's not going to force you to get on the treadmill or the Stairmaster for hours. You know, they give you like a guide and it's up to you to follow it. And when you step on stage, it's like, okay, I know I did absolutely everything in my power and I followed everything to a T. And that's all that I need. That's all I need is that I know I didn't go off and cheat on my diet. I know that I didn't miss a single cardio session or a single rep. And also not relying on anybody else and it just all being up to you is, I think, what just really, really pushed me. And again, it was me just proving to myself that I can do this. And I think it's funny because, you know, the military, it's supposed to teach you self-discipline and, you know, holding yourself accountable. And I always say that bodybuilding did that way more. I learned that with bodybuilding way more than I ever did with the military. There's no shortcuts in anything when it comes to this sport. When in the military, that you can definitely take some shortcuts when it either comes to work or doing simple little duties. And again, you're working with other teammates on that side of things. And so just the independency and the self-discipline it just creates is amazing.
Do you think that it's for you a lot of, you mentioned like not missing cardio or making, you know, checking all the boxes on your diet or any of the aspects of a prep or whatever it may be. Do you feel like for you that was a lot of enforced discipline along the way, or do you feel like it was a lot of just like passion for what you're doing that kept you on track? Or I mean, I'm sure it was a combination of both, but which one do you feel like it was more of?
It was definitely a challenge at first, you know, like I had mentioned earlier, I learned how to track my own macros and things. And I almost set little mini goals for myself before ever starting a prep. Like I would make sure I got my steps in. I would make sure that I got my lift in and I would hit all my macros and my water for the day. So I think going into prep, and now I have somebody to tell me what to do. And I think it was almost easier because I already had, I think, that self-discipline when I was teaching myself and I saw how amazing those results were. So now I have my coach and she literally just tells me what to do. There's no thought about it. You just get up and you just do it. So it was almost easier. And it's easier. And I know a lot of people don't actually use coaches in their off season, which blows my mind. Because I could never imagine not having a coach anymore. Like, I don't want to go into the gym and think about what I have to lift or do I need to up my macros or should I cut them back? Like, I don't know. And now it's like I almost rely on that so much, but it is what it is. And that's just part of the sport.
For you, is the off season harder or is the prep harder?
I want to say off season is probably the hardest for me. And it's not because I know there's no show in mind or there's no deadline or anything. It's just, again, I get lost. I'm like, well, I'm not really working towards something. So like my motivation can go down a little bit, but something I never fall off of is my diet because that's the only thing I can really control. I can control my intensity in the gym and I can control my diet. I know it's not good to get too fat in your off season because guess what? Come prep, it's going to be hell. It's going to be so hard. So like, I think one thing my coach always tells me too is she's like, just remember, you're always in prep, always. No matter what, you need a controlled off season to set yourself up for that success come prep. And I think just having like that mentality too just makes everything so much easier. And it's almost fun too, because yeah, it is not so strict. It's strict to a point, but if I want to go out for a meal or go on a date, I'm going to do it. And there's no excuse as to why you can't. Just don't go crazy. Just don't go crazy as long as you get back on like your routine the next day. I always think that there's room for um just room for some fun. I know in prep I definitely shut down and I don't know I don't have fun, but um that's just, again, it's just part of it, I think.
When you first started, was that a hard balance to find at the beginning when you did go into an off season? Like you're kind of like getting into bodybuilding and there's shows to do, you're in prep, and then like that's all you know about bodybuilding right off the bat. And then there's like an off season, there's a time off. For you, was it hard to like know what do I do here?
I just always have had my coaches guide. The first time around, I don't ever want to say I took a real off season, because I didn't. I took little mini breaks in between shows, and so I wouldn't get over 10 to 15 pounds above my stage weight. And then when I would prep for the next show, it was just really easy to just be there and be ready really quick. But even going after shows, the only thing I really knew was that reverse dieting is super important. Um, and that's really it. I know, like, you're not supposed to just take away cardio. You're not supposed to go crazy with food. And that was it. It was just so black and white to me. I'm like, okay, that's easy. I can do that. Have I had my binge moments after shows and I really regretted it? And I was like, oh, I almost need like that reality check. Like, okay, I feel like shit. I look like shit. Um, just get back on the diet, because I have a lot of autoimmune issues too. So that it is really important for me to choose the proper foods and not go crazy, because then everything gets out of whack.
Right. What point did you feel like you were going to be a pro or you had the potential to be a pro?
So I always looked up to bikini girls, always. And when I ended up getting like super lean, I saw how much muscle I actually had. And I remember the feedback I got at my first two shows. One feedback was, well, even my coach, when we first started together, she's like, I think you would do good with wellness. And at the time, wellness was still like pretty new. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, no one pays attention to no one pays attention to wellness. And I had always had big legs because I was a gymnast, and I just wanted them gone. And I was like, no, I'd be really happy with like my itty bitty, like bikini girl, my bikini girl legs. Like, I want that. She's like, okay. And then first show, what they said, my upper body was pretty dense, in that I almost would look better doing figure. And then second show, I lost. I got second. I got second place at my second show. And again, they said my upper body just was too dense. So we cut back and we just tried to really get my legs lean. And I think then my third show was a national show and I got shit on. And I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to be a pro. I was like, this is going to take so much time. I was like, I guess I just got to find like that happy medium about conditioning muscle. And I just was making so many changes from show to show. And I think just from dieting for so long too, it almost just shaped my body how it needed to. And then I forget what show I did after that. Oh, it was another national show. And again, I got like third call outs and I was like, there's no way. There's no way. And then I won an overall at another show. And then I won another show. And then I didn't feel like I was ever going to go pro until I finally placed top 5 at a national show. And I was like, holy shit, maybe I can't do this. And then little did I know that 3 months later, I'd be getting my pro card. I had no idea.
Did you set a timeline at all? Like, okay, I've kind of got over that hump, right? Now I've finally got to a place where I feel like confident and I can get there. But did you place any like, okay, if it takes me more than X amount of shows or X amount of years, or is it just kind of for you, was it about like, let's just see what happens and we'll just take it show by show?
Yeah, I was really trying to lean into that feedback I was getting. And And I was like, okay, this is actually going to take like some time. And then once I finally like evaluated that, I was like, okay, what do I need to do? I would always ask my coach, like, okay, is my training like, I trust her with my life. Like she has been so good to me. She knows what the hell she's talking about too, which is obviously a good thing. But once I evaluated that, I was like, okay, I want to be a pro by the time I'm 25. I started competing when I was 22, and I was like, I think 25, 3 years, like that's pretty good. And I always said I want to be a pro by the time I'm 25, and I want to go to the Olympia by the time I'm 30. And so I met that one goal. I went pro before I turned 25. So we'll see what the future holds with the rest. But yeah, there was no really given timeline. It was just that one goal. And then once I finally got that goal, I was like, okay, let's reevaluate because I don't know what my next goal is. Because after I got my pro card, I remember going to the gym my first time back. I was like, this is my first lift as a pro. And I was like, I felt lost. I was depressed. I was like, I don't know what to do. But we're learning to relove the gym and relove the process.
Was it because you were kind of going into it now as like this fresh competitor into a big world of pros? Did that have a lot to do with it?
Well, yeah, and now looking back, everyone always tells me like you went pro really fast, like you only competed for 2 years. And now I still feel like an amateur. And then when I step on stage with the pros, it's gonna be like not shot. But you can't think like that. And again, it's that self-doubt, so much self-doubt all the time. And again, I'm really trying to work on it. And I'm like, what does it take for me to prove myself? I didn't think I could go pro. And I did. So like I don't know why I can't have that confidence going into other things, but it's a work in progress.
Do you do certain like mental training or, confidence, whatever training that may be, or anything like that to like boost your confidence or give you kind of like shift your mindset or kind of be more realistic with like your feelings versus where you are?
I wish I did more of that. One thing I actually just started getting into was like writing down my goals for the day, just the day. Um, Almost like a top five, like, okay, what do I need to do today to make myself feel good, feel motivated mentally, and to just really conquer the day. And like one thing I love is like just going out for a walk. I walk my dog like 20 times a day. Or like even if I just want to go for a little stroll on the Stairmaster, and like I'll listen to like a really good podcast that talks about like manifesting and how to relax your mind and deal with anxiety and things like that. Or self-help books too. I have really been getting into reading, and just again just trying to find myself and lean into those emotions and just try to figure it out internally.
Are workouts a place for you and a time for you that shuts that anxiety off, or for you, does it rev it up more because you're kind of like in this adrenaline rush zone?
It depends on the day. Some days I go into the gym, I'm like, oh my God, that was an amazing lift. I feel so good. And then other days I go in and I'm like, I start overthinking. I'm like, did I work hard enough? Was my workout good enough? Do I even deserve a rest day this week? Which you cannot do that. And I really wish I'd listened to my own advice. It's like I struggle resting because I feel like I just need to constantly go, go, go. If I can't get mind muscle connection like good enough that workout, I get so pissed off and I'm like, right, like that was a waste. Like, why'd you do that? Or I won't leave the gym until I at least had like one good set, or I felt that mind muscle connection. So it really just is given on the day. And I wish I could just go in and be so positive, have the best workout ever. And other days it's like all that negative self-doubt, like you suck. That was horrible. You are way stronger than that. You have muscle. I get pissed off at my glutes. I talk to my glutes a lot. I'm like, I know you have muscle back there. So can you like contract? Can you do something? Like some days I just can't get my muscle connection. And infuriates me, honestly. I'll tear up in the gym with frustration. And it's like, God, bodybuilding, it's like mentally, it's horrible on my mind, but at the same time, I love it so much. But I think that's why I'm so passionate and I get so frustrated or I get so happy, is because it's just something you truly love. You're gonna have those ups and downs with it.
Have you ever thought about it as like self-doubt as being a curse of those who do succeed because they are never happy with where they are? They always have to continue to push. You know, if you're, there's obviously a spectrum, right? Like there's too much self-doubt, there's too much self-confidence where it's like, oh, I'm great. I don't need to train. I'm perfect. Don't need to diet, don't need to do anything because my body's already perfect. Or self-doubt's like, you know, obviously the other complete end, but like maybe more self-doubt, especially in the world of sports. And then basically I would think in the world of any competitive spirit, like self-doubt would push you to keep working, whereas too much confidence in some ways can be like a overconfidence, can be an arrogance. Do you ever think about it from that perspective at all?
I really do. I feel like maybe I'm being biased, but I feel like you almost don't see that a whole lot with girls in the competitive world. I think we're just so much more harder on ourselves versus like, I'm not going to name names, but there are a lot of male competitors that I have seen on social media where they're like, oh, like 8 weeks out and I just cheated on my diet. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like you have the physique and the genetics to get away with that. Most of us don't. And so it pisses me off, honestly, because it's like, I just feel like I get it. Genetics, cool. That's one thing. But there are people out here like busting ass and doing everything so perfect because guess what? We don't believe in ourselves. So we have to push hard as hell versus like there's again, those guys, they're like, oh, I skipped cardio today. It's okay. Or, oh, if I cheated on my diet, it's okay. And then what makes me even more upset is when they go out there and they win. And it's like, it sucks. But then you can't be outworked. You really can't. If you are putting in so much effort and time and you are, you know, again, really hard on yourself and you have that self-doubt, it's going to pay off in the end, I think. Maybe not at that show or in that moment, but eventually it'll pay off.
Looking back at your previous shows and maybe even previous, you know, just preps too, but like what do you feel like you've continually gotten better at?
I would say my overall confidence on stage has evolved a lot. And I honestly don't think I got that until this past year. My last two shows that were national shows. And again, I really think it just paid off because the first time I felt confident on stage, that was the time I finally placed top 5 at a national show. One thing that never could click with me and it would piss me off so much was posing because I was like, I was a cheerleader, I was a dancer. Like, if you really think about it, it's kind of similar, but not, it is very different in many ways. But it's like your routine. It's like, okay, do I put my foot here? Do I twist this way? Do I do this? Like, it just never flowed, never clicked. And then I would just study the Olympia girls on YouTube. I would pull up like old Olympias from like 2020, 2021, and I would just watch them pose and pose and pose how they walked, which it's a lot different because they have a whole like minute routine versus like we get 10 seconds on stage. But just seeing like how confident they were with what were they doing. Okay, let me try to flip my hair. Does that work for me? No, it does not. It looks awkward. Okay. And I think just studying that, I have gotten very good or a lot better at posing. So I am very happy because you can have the greatest physique, but if your posing is not good, you will be overlooked or the judges will just be like, so I'm really glad I figured that one out because it helped a lot.
And then going into, you know, becoming a pro, what are some of the things that you're looking at in regards to diet, exercise, recovery? What are some areas where and specific things that you're looking to implement or looking to what, you know, just for example, like, okay, I need to really focus more on maybe getting an hour more sleep per night, or getting, 20 more ounces of water per day, or going to a massage therapist, or things like that? Are there things that you've talked about with your coach that, hey, now that we're at this level, we need to do these certain things differently, or more focused, or more seriously, or just incorporating new things?
Yeah, my recovery is not good. I know I should probably take like 2 or 3 rest days a week, but right now I'm just doing one. And I was talking about that earlier. It's like it's really hard for me to rest because I feel like I just have to keep like going and going and going. And we all know that that's not good. Your body needs to recover. And my sleep is always hit or miss. I'm either getting 8 hours or I'm getting like 5 hours. There's no like in between. So I think recovery, sleep. I do need to practice posing more. It's not fun in the off season. I will openly admit it. It sucks in the off season because you're not lean, and it's like it's not fun to pose when you're a little softer. So I wish I could get better sleep. I wish I could recover more, and I wish I would pose more. But when it comes to like diet, in prep, I do meal plan. I don't want to have to think about my macros or anything like that. I make my coach give me a meal plan. But in my off season, I do macros. And I think I need to reevaluate what macros I'm having certain times of the day, because I have noticed I'm having like a super high fiber meal first thing in the morning. And then I go and train and it's like I'm still really full, which isn't fun to lift on a full stomach, really. So like just finding little things that's like, okay, do I need to do like a quicker digesting carb with my breakfast? And then like, okay, post workout, obviously you need carbs and protein, awesome. But then like towards the end of the day, it's like, okay, do I stick more towards protein and fats? Do I incorporate carbs? I think just like finding that too, because it's the same for a long time, for like the last few months. And it's like if I go out of order with like what I'm doing, I'm like, okay, I'm starving like all day. That's not good. But then if if I start switching meals around, it's like, okay, that's more satiating and things like that. So macros and timing, posing and recovery.
And do you have a 12-month to 18-month plan?
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
Yes. So, well, yes and no. So I actually was going to make my pro debut in November. I was going to do it this year. But I actually started having some hormone imbalances and issues going on, which I have had for a while. It just ended up getting like pretty bad. So I feel like I'm still recovering too from those past 3 years of going nonstop. I lost my period for 3 years. 3 years I didn't get my period. And so now that it's back, I promised myself, I'm like, okay, we need to have a consistent on time regular period for at least 12 months before we go and getting shredded or anything like that. So now we're just really listening to my body. And I think we're not going to really evaluate what shows I want to do. Probably not until January. When January comes, it's like, okay, I'm planning my whole season out and I want to do them back to back, like 6 weeks in a row of just competing. I don't want to do like one show, take 2 months and then do another show, because that's not fun. And again, it's just being lean, longevity, not good. Not good for me, not good for my body.
Was it a certain like wake up and have this feeling of like, okay, I need to take my health more seriously? Or was that more of like a secondary thought to another thought, if that makes sense?
So I actually got diagnosed with lupus last year, August last year. I was 3 weeks out from a show and I was having all these issues. I was super inflamed. I was so shredded, but I just looked watery and inflamed. And I was getting like these crazy rashes on my face, all over my body, a lot of other graphic things, but I'm not gonna TMI. But so I ended up just going to the doctor, like, hey, like, what is going on with me? And they're like, oh, you're showing symptoms of like something autoimmune. And so we ended up doing like all these blood tests and stuff. And sure enough, I had lupus. Had no idea what lupus was. And again, I'm still like learning what it is and how to handle that. And so is my coach. So that was like a red flag. The show I went pro at, I wasn't even going to do that year because of, that diagnosis. And I was going to take that time off to really recover, relax, try to put on some healthy weight. But when I got that judge's feedback, the judge was like, you should do nationals. And I was like, shit, here we go. I'm glad I did. Don't get me wrong, but no. Yeah. And then I knew, I was like, I gotta get my period back. That was probably my main goal because that's not good for women to lose it that long.
And as far as like long term in bodybuilding, is that still the main goal? Is let's just take it, health first, but I still want to be competing in, you mentioned your 5-year goal of Olympia, but even after that, maybe in 10 years or in 15 years, is that something that you see yourself doing?
Truthfully, I see myself doing it. It's just if my body is going to let me. I know longevity is what a lot of athletes want in this sport because it is really demanding on the body. But my coach, she is amazing. She's been competing since she was like 19. She's in her 40s now, and she's going to Masters Olympia this weekend. And just seeing her and how she, she always tells me like, as long as you take time off and you give your body like that break, she's like, you're in it for the long run. She's like, there's smart ways to do things and wrong ways to do things, but as long as you're not killing yourself every day over this, then she's like, you can definitely do it for the long run. So I hope I'm competing. I hope I one day am competing in master divisions because I want that. I couldn't imagine my life without this sport. So I think I have a long road ahead, depending on my body. Again, like if you're taking that time off and still living like the healthy like lifestyle, I know some people that will get super shredded for a show, completely go off the walls and neglect lifting and neglect eating healthy and stuff, and then they get to the point where they're like, oh, I don't like how I feel, I don't like how I look, let me do another show. So what do? They go through prep, they kill themselves, and then it's just like it's a domino effect. You're not going to man it for the longevity. So I think like the structured off season really helps a lot. And I have actually seen a lot of people who, the way that bikini, especially the way things are going, a lot of girls, they are seeing that it is evolving so much. It's more muscle is required. Being more lean is now required versus like, I don't know, maybe even 6 years ago, it wasn't like that. So I have been seeing a lot of girls kind of ditch like the NPC, IFBB side of things. So these girls I've been following forever that were IFBB pros, and they're now switching over to this division where it's basically the same thing. However, you don't have to get that lean. Not that much muscle is required. It's almost like a pageant show. It looks so fun. And then I see girls competing in like CrossFit or like doing triathlons and stuff like that. So I think that's always good to think about too, that there are other options out there. If you aren't willing to have the constant cycle of diet, compete, off-season diet, if you get sick of that, and you're sick of pushing your body to the extremes and being that lean, then there are so many different options out there, which is really cool to kind of dive into. I was actually just talking to my boyfriend about this yesterday. I was like, if I retired like super young from like the IFBB, I think I would like look into other things like training for a triathlon. I've never been good at cardio or like anything like that. So I think it'd be really cool to like test my limits in other things and just look at other options. That's always so cool to me. But yeah, I'm excited. I don't get me wrong, I want to stay in the IFBB for as long as I can handle it. But I definitely would love to look into other things to try to get good at physically. So we'll see.
Best of luck with you and your journey moving forward.
Thank you so much for having me. It was good talking with you.
You as well. And if you want to, before we head out, if you want to share your social media or anything like that, you can.
Yeah, the only platform I ever really use is Instagram, and my Instagram is Brooklyn's Life.